Joining me now, Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts. Kevin, your reaction to this, I think, is a very aggressive move by China. Now, we had James Carafano on at 6:30. He says that it's just a lot of posturing. We shouldn't, be responding in tandem. But I think that we're not responding fast enough or hard enough. Your thoughts?
Well, it is certainly posturing, but it's posturing that we really need to take note of, Cheryl, to your point. And basically, you need to see this as a chess match where Congress fittingly appropriated $10 billion for the defense of Taiwan. Frankly, we believe that we should be allocating more money to Taiwan and dialing back our support of Ukraine, given that Europeans tell us they can handle that. But the point is the larger one, that China responded with their own chess move. And by having these 71 sorties flown over the Taiwan Strait, we ought to respond by saying we're going to double the support for the defense of Taiwan so that they know that the United States of America stands for free people across the planet, including everyone who lives on the island of Taiwan.
China announcing that travelers no longer need to quarantine upon arriving to the mainland. That starts January 8th. Kind of a quick about face, to be clear here, sir, when it comes to their COVID policy. They've got this massive COVID outbreak. Beijing says they're not even going to count daily cases anymore, which I find frightening because now the concern, Kevin, is that these mass amounts of COVID cases are going to just spread worldwide, and that could mean new strains. What do you say?
Well, I won't be dismissive toward your concern. We don't want new strains of COVID to be spreading, but let's be honest. This is good news, and it's good news because it is a response to two realities in China. The first is their economy has been devastated by their overwrought lockdowns. And the second thing is, especially considering that the Chinese, perhaps even intentionally, but even if it was unintentional in spreading the virus, they were terrible at telling the world what was going on. And as a result, there were protests in the last several weeks throughout China that even in that totalitarian country had an effect. And so we ought to celebrate this. I think we can trust individual people to make a good decision about where they travel and don't based on their own risk tolerance for COVID. I can tell you, for me and for all of us at the Heritage Foundation, we believe it's past time for the world to be open and for us to go about our lives as people who deserve to be free and self-governing. So we celebrate it.
Hi, Kevin. One of the things that concerns me that doesn't get any focus is the fact that China pretty much has one of the most impressive intelligence apparatuses, and they have infiltrated college campuses. So I'm just wondering from you in the Heritage, I wrote a piece for Campus Reform. Why isn't there enough focus on Chinese intelligence, what they're doing on college campuses, particularly with something like the Wuhan laboratory, where we see the coordination between campuses and campuses over in China?
Thanks so much for your question. I'm an old college president, and we didn't have any business with the CCP at the institution I led. The answer to your question is a very unfortunate one, as you know, and thanks so much for your own work on it. And it's because the Chinese Communist Party hires multi-million-dollar lobbyists, Americans, in Washington, D.C., and they have caused our own members of Congress to be very weak when it comes to China. Therefore, the Heritage Foundation says that on January 3rd, when the Republicans take over the House officially, among their top 5 issues is that they need to tear out root and branch every source of funding that allows the Chinese to have undue influence in this country. Anything short of that is failure and cowardice, and the Heritage Foundation is going to remind them of that every day.
What about TikTok? That seems to be a little bipartisan. There's a lot of concern on both sides of the aisle about the influence and the Chinese control of TikTok. I mean, they're accessing our data, let's be honest. They say they're not. To be clear, that's the line. But I think most of us don't believe that.
Well, I love that question, Cheryl, about TikTok, because it shows that grassroots pressure, parents who are concerned about the effect of TikTok on their teenagers, obviously all of us concerned, as you mentioned, about data privacy, can sometimes result in bipartisan reform in Congress. And so we ought to celebrate that as a huge win. At Heritage Foundation, we've never done business with TikTok. We're present on all of the other social platforms. Anyone listening to this needs to make sure during this holiday week to get their kids and grandkids off that terrible platform, because the American people ultimately are the ones responsible for standing up to China. Congress will follow if we're willing to show that courage.
Agree. Before I let you go, real quick, I got to ask you about this latest round of the Twitter files, and it shows how they rigged the COVID debate at the behest of the Biden administration. You've got David Zwiggs, journalist, who reports that they censored information that was true, but at the time was inconvenient to U.S. government policy. They discredited doctors, experts. They suppressed users sharing data that conflicted with their narrative, even though a lot of the things that they suppressed we've now found out to indeed be fact.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not surprised because the government does a great job of telling us not only what we need to believe, but what we can and can't say on social media. It's frankly one of the reasons that at Heritage we believe that the Biden administration has completely bungled the handling of COVID. The vaccine is not a vaccine, it's a jab. In fact, those of us who are middle-aged and younger men ought to be very concerned about the effects of it, leaving the choice to be vaccinated up to individuals because ultimately the government, to your point, and to David Zweig's about the Twitter files, we were not getting the facts about it. We need to get back in this country to trusting individual Americans to make virtuous choices because ultimately that's what a self-governing people does. This is not a Republican or a Democrat issue, of course, but I'm grateful that we have some elected officials, mostly governors of states, who know that the best process, the best approach when it comes to handling COVID is to trust individuals.
Kevin, looking forward to seeing what Heritage does in the new year. We can be following, of course, your organization. Kevin Roberts, thank you.